He became one of the brightest boxers of the 90s and ended his career unable to survive his only defeat.
It's all Barrera as Prince Naseem takes several power shots.
Today we'll talk about the legendary fight that ended the career of Prince Naseem Hamed and reveal all the details of his famous fight against Marco Antonio Barrera, one of the best fights of 2001. When Naseem entered the British ring in 1992, many initially mistook his funny and incredibly talented upstart, but they soon changed their minds. This charismatic Arab from Sheffield immediately stood out, which was not easy in a country experiencing a boxing boom. By 2001, the famous Prince Naseem Hamed had collected all possible featherweight titles. He held the WBC, IBF, WBO belts, and the Ring Magazine title, which was rapidly gaining popularity among mainstream versions. The situation was overshadowed by Naseem's separation from his longtime mentor, Brendan Ingle. Hamed began working with the famous Emmanuel Stewart, but their partnership didn't flourish. Hamed was his own boss, listening only to Ingle, and with a bank account amounting to $40 million, listening to anyone else became unthinkable for the prince. Naseem had reached the stage where it was time for big fights. His perfect record was impressive: 35 wins, 31 by knockout, with no defeats. He defeated everyone in his path, but a big fight with a world boxing superstar was needed. Stewart immediately rejected the idea of meeting Juan Manuel Marquez, believing the Mexican style was too uncomfortable for Naseem. However, he eagerly accepted the option of fighting another Mexican, Marco Antonio Barrera, who was ready to leave his WBO super bantamweight title and move up to a category for this fight. Negotiations dragged out for almost a year, during which time Naseem had a spectacular fight against the promising Augie Sanchez. The main problem remained Naseem's preparation. Gone were the days when he tirelessly trained under Brendan Ingle. Training was no longer his main focus. Before the fight with Barrera, a serious problem arose. Naseem was 35 pounds overweight. The meeting with Barrera was scheduled for April 7, 2001. Naseem was to receive a fee of $8.5 million, while Barrera relied on a more modest but still record-breaking amount for him, $1.8 million. Naseem was favored 3-1 to win, and boxing experts in America were even more categorical in their assessments. 28 of 30 favored a confident victory for the prince. Naseem's colorful entrance was overshadowed by a devastating first-round performance from Barrera, who had obviously studied his opponent's last fight against Augie Sanchez. More than once, he stood in his classic balanced stance and delivered a right straight or side punch to the chest, followed by a smashing left hook to the head. Barrera proved the effectiveness of this combination throughout the fight. The logic is simple. The first blow to the chest set up the strongest left hand, allowing him to break through with the left hook. By delivering this series of blows and adding several accurate jabs, the Mexican took the first round. However, shaking NZ is only half the battle. In the second round, 9 went ahead but again ran into Barrera's signature combination. When they're in close, as his head keeps his hands very high, in one episode the prince dropped the Mexican with a wrestling technique, which made the opponent very angry. But the Brit also shot from the left. Barrera holds him by the waist as Barrera is pinned down. I've seen that before finally coming into the third round, which was a continuation of the second. Fighting as a counterpuncher proved more effective than taking the lead. One of those left-hand shots by particular respect for power. Marco Antonio hit twice with a working combination, and Nim accurately answered with a right hand. Barrera lands a right hand, followed by a left. In the fourth segment, the Mexican again managed to shake the enemy with his left hook and take the round. Barrera was very composed, but he hasn't got one yet. However, in the fifth round, the pattern completely changed. The tactical game began at a distance, with stronger nerves favoring Barrera. He hit twice with his signature combination, having received a thrashing from the steward during the break. 9 changed his stance, got right-handed, and acted very successfully, winning the 6th round. That continues to pile up points. That's why he is Barrera. 57-57, 3 rounds apiece. When he's pacing himself, doing clowning with a clown, the pace is showing more frequently. Landing it square in the middle, he's starting to pick up the power, informed by that round, stalking and trying to left punches around. Still, the Brit couldn't turn the tide of the battle, which spoiled the impression of the local public, who mercilessly shouted at every blow Barrera landed, creating a false impression of his advantage. It wasn't, but even Naseem could not do anything with the collected and psychological prepared counterpart. Everything was evenly divided until the 11th round. Moreover, the 10th round saw the Prince take his asset, throwing the left hand but not throwing anything else. In the 11th round, Barrera activated, slightly increased the speed, and confidently took the round. I don't think he's ever in a fight. He was hurt, but when you showed concern, he turned it against you. New Zealand won't counter any technique the Prince has developed since childhood. George is there, but not when the Prince is running the ropes. They're 3 minutes from the conclusion, and the 12th round became a real advantage for the Mexican. The score was 103, 7 rounds to 4 for Marco. Despite advice to stay away, he's going for it. He made the opponent miss, and Barrera punched accurately, but spoiled the impression with wrestling tactics, grabbing his opponent's hand and hitting him on the ring post. Joe Cortez rightly deducted a point, but Nim still lost tactically. All 3 judges ruled in favor of Barrera, 116 to 111, and 115 to 112 twice. There was no defeat as the critics of Nim claimed. The possibility of a rematch was in the contract, and Nim expressed interest, blaming his performance on injuries to both hands. However, the boxing world never saw a second fight between these great boxers. Nim had one more fight against Spaniard Manuel Cabo, and ended his career at 28. His early retirement wasn't due to the loss to Barrera, as noted by the British champion himself. He couldn't train as hard as before and made the right decision. Marco Antonio continued to perform for a long time, with victories over Eric Morales and Johnny Tapia, and a defeat by Manny Pacquiao in 2001. Barrera did his job that night in Las Vegas, being slightly better than the Prince and deserving the win.